I just closed the end credit curtains and exited stage left on a game I said I wasn't going to review. I said it many times that it was going to be the worst Call of Duty title in quite some years, and this is primarily because Activision Blizzard, with all the lawsuits going on, simply doesn't have time to focus on their games, and this yearly or annual release of Call of Duty titles, despite the fact they are rotating through 4 major studios, has really been affecting their QC or quality control process. However, I am proud to say that Call of Duty Vanguard is not nearly as bad as I initially thought. In fact, the campaign is okay. This review is going to be strictly focusing on the campaign or the story mode. I am going to make a separate video reviewing the multiplayer and the zombies modes because I do think that each mode definitely deserves its own comprehensive review, or this would be a 30 to 45 minute video, and the attention span of people on the internet is shorter than my kill streaks in Call of Duty. This is going to be an honest, comprehensive, spoiler-free review, and we are going to break it into separate categories such as graphics, audio design, story, gameplay, and performance, i.e. optimization on the PC and consoles. Let's get it. Alrighty, stallions and stallionettes, welcome to the Gamer Heaven. I'm your host, AK40 Kevin. If you see me staring down throughout this video, I'm not staring at my schmeckle or texting on the job. I do have my keynotes here. Of course, this is unscripted, but I did make some notes while I was playing Vanguard, so I didn't forget anything. So starting off with the story, 90% of the 5-hour campaign or story mode is told completely in flashbacks. This is kind of shitty. This is done primarily to flesh out and give a little bit of backstory and character development on the 4 major characters, as the developers did say during an interview prior to the game's release that they wanted to focus on character development and make some very memorable characters. There is only one of the 4 main characters that stands out, not only in her combat abilities, but also her as a person and her background. But each one of these 4 characters brings something new to the team, as they each have their own unique ability that you can use in combat, and they all each come from a different host nation of the 4 major allies of World War II. Let's meet the characters now. Bring them out, one at a time, please. We got the heart, the soul, cum glue, and leader of the booty brigade, Kingsley. He's an academic leader type. He attended Cambridge University. We've got this beautiful chocolate man, a natural-born leader, and he is enlisted in the British Army. He came out of the womb barking orders at his parents, and because of this, his ability out there in the combat field is to be able to direct troops in different directions, to focus on different targets on the battlefield. Unfortunately, the only downside to this is your teammates rarely, if ever, actually kill the targets that you're sicking them on, but it can be very useful to keep them distracted so you can flank. So if there's an RPG or machine gun that's been drilling your chocolate starfish without consent, you can sick your teammates on there. It fully aggroes on your teammates, and then you can slide up in the DMs of your enemies, come around the side, and get penetration through the barricade. And I don't know if you noticed this, but he is black, and as we are fighting Nazis, some of the protagonists have some rather unkind words to say to him during some cutscenes. We've got Lucas Riggs. He's from Australia, and sure enough, he likes to get down underneath the enemy's taint. With explosives, his ability, he can carry an astronomical amount of explosives shoved up his tuchus, or somewhere, I don't know. He doesn't have an explosive satchels. I'm assuming that he's keystering all these extra munitions. Not only can he carry extra explosives, but you also get an arc line that shows exactly where your ordnance is going to go. And sure enough, he's a demolitions expert that specializes in tearing down the enemy's cooter. Next up, we got Wade Wiggity Whack'em in the Coochie Jackson. He's a hotshot US pilot, and besides his aerial abilities in the sky when he's barrel rolling and dogfighting the enemy, he also can do a really interesting thing on foot when he's boots on ground, where he can not only slow time, but also see enemies through walls and cover, and then also get this kind of bullet time action where it shoots enemies into the sky like ragdolls. This ability tickled me the wrong way because not only is this a Call of Duty game, but also it's a World War II game, and it didn't explain how he got these abilities. Maybe if he had done some experimental prototype drugs, or they had done some genetic enhancements on him or something, that would make sense, but his ability seems a little bit too sci-fi and far-fetched for me. What is this, a World War II Matrix edition? But if that is the case, he is not the one. The one is Polina Petrova, aka Lady Nightingale, by far the best character in the game. Not only is she the biggest badass, as she is based on a real character, a Russian sniper with over 300 confirmed kills, a master of stealth, and just an overall badass. She's the only one of the characters during the story her flashbacks actually added to the character development, where you could relate with her because it went into her family and showed her hometown before it was attacked by the Germans in Japan, and it was peaceful, and you actually got that human connection with her. Not to mention her combat abilities are the best, as she uses incredible stealth where you can walk quicker while crouch, slide further. She's a crack shot with a sniper rifle, and she also has the best missions. Her actual playable missions are the best ones in the game, which I'll explain more during the gameplay section. So all 4 of the main characters are good in essence. Polina Petrova, aka Lady Nightingale, is the best character in the game. No story is good without compelling villains, and in fact we have 2, a duet of douchebags, if you will. We've got Hermann Fressinger, who is an SS officer, and he is Hitler's direct successor after Hitler kills himself. Again, no spoilers or anything anything, but he's a aggressive douchebag. Also, I had mentioned in previous videos before I actually played the game that there were no swastikas in the game. That was a rumor. However, it turned out not to be the case. There's plenty of swastikas in this game. Now, why does that matter? Well, this is a World War II game. It is supposed to be offensive and nitty gritty and put you into that mindset of being a grunt behind enemy lines, fighting Germany and Japan as one of the 4 allies in the trenches of all these different scope and scales of battles, such as Midway. You're fighting Nazis, and without that, you're just fighting angry Germans. It doesn't have the same appeal to it. So there is plenty of swastikas and SS badges and other German things to keep it true to the historical time frame. Just a small note, but I did put it in my phone. I wanted to mention it. It says right there is swastikas in the game, because I had said several times in previous videos that there was none. I wanted to correct myself. And then the other villain is Janik Richter. Now, this guy isn't really physically threatening. He looks kind of like a German Elton John, and he just has kind of a weaselly way about him, but he's an interrogator and definitely a master manipulator, kind of a conniving snake that will slither his way into your thoughts and whatnot. He's not really as villainous, I guess you will say, as Fresslinger, but he's there as well in several of the cutscenes. So again, no spoilers or anything, but the campaign is about 5 hours long, and basically the primary objective is to flesh out the backstories of these 4 major characters and how the 4 united countries had one of their major representatives, i.e. these main characters, come together to stop the spiritual successor of Hitler from 2 different operations which are never explained. Even at the final cutscene, they mention the names of these 2 projects, you know, Operation Buttfuck and Operation Extra Lubricant, but they don't explain whose chocolate starfish is getting assaulted and, you know, what country's rod is doing the penetration. They don't explain any of this stuff. By the way, if you're like, whoa, this guy has a lot of sexual innuendos, welcome to my channel. The thing is, it shows multiple real battles from World War II, such as the Battle of Midway. There is an astronomical amount of cutscenes in this game, which I will talk about during the graphical section. They look fantastic, but there are several cutscenes that run about 15 minutes long that could have been turned into a 45-minute mission very easily, because the battle that they're showing, you're thinking to yourself, damn, I would actually like to play that instead of watching this cutscene. There was a couple cutscenes where I thought they could have ditched them and made them actual playable missions that would have extended the playtime from about 5 hours to about 6.5, 7, which is relatively long for a Call of Duty story, but for any other game, that's actually really short. And then perhaps explain the story more through character dialogue while you're actually playing instead of just the cutscenes, which do look gorgeous, as I mentioned earlier. But at the end of the day, I'm going to give the story a 5 out of 10 bananas. Not quite enough to make a split, but also not just like a flaccid doozer or anything. It did have some interesting moments, especially Polina Petrova's missions, which were actually fun, and it did have some pretty epic moments of World War II. However, it always seemed like the scope and scale was relatively small, considering it was a world war with a bunch of countries just duking it out, right? All of the actual sandboxes that you're fighting in are relatively small, because even though you can look out at these long vistas and whatnot, if you just run into an area that looks open, one of 2 things is going to happen. You will run into an invisible wall, which there are tons of in this game, or you're going to get a message popping up on screen saying, warning, return to the battlefield. And this happens sometimes when you are literally engaging an enemy that you can see, but you start walking towards them and it's like, whoa, don't take that route. You got to go around this way first. Nothing is blocking me visually in front of me. There's no barbed wire that's blocking me or anything. I should be able to walk over there and fight the guy that's shooting at me, but you're telling me to return to the battlefield. I'm fighting. If that's not in the battle, I don't know what is. As for the gameplay, most of the level design, the missions are pretty bad. The levels are full of invisible walls, linear paths, including forced stealth, and get back to the mission messages that'll pop up in your tuchus while you're actually engaging the enemies. Your comrades will block your movement and your shot lines, directly popping up in a lane of fire, and the flying missions looked fantastic graphically, but the flying, well, it was shit. You have very minimal control over your aircraft, which is unfortunate because, again, a dogfight in World War II over a bunch of aircraft carriers should be an epic moment, but it just felt like I was fighting with the controls more so than anything. And another thing that pretty pissed me off is they had the Battle of El Alamein, which was one of the biggest known tank battles ever, like tank versus tank. You're watching these tanks fight and you can get behind them for cover, but you can't pilot any of the tanks. Or is it called piloting? You can't drive the tanks. You know, you can't even hop in a turret or ride on one or anything. That's just a huge missed opportunity, considering vehicle combat in World War II was fucking huge. And they have an aircraft mission, which again controls like poop, and maybe they were scared that the controls would also be poop in the tanks. I just feel like that was a huge missed opportunity. There is also no destructible environments, and I mean no destructible environments. You can throw a grenade into a wall that looks flimsy, like it would explode, nothing happens. You would shoot cover hoping that it will disintegrate and be able to expose the enemies behind it, nothing. And not just that, an enemy will duck behind a piece of plywood, a 1/4-inch piece of plywood. You no longer can hit him, which is weird because traditionally in every other COD game, you can shoot directly through walls and hit the person on the other side. It honestly felt like I was back to my paintball days and I was on the course where if somebody ducks behind, you know, a very light piece of cover, they're just no longer hittable. It was weird. Also, another little small gripe, you start out in a moving mission, and the only downside to this, if you're somebody like myself that tries to optimize your controller settings whenever you start a new first-person shooter by going into the settings, making the right thumbstick dead zone the very smallest amount, i.e. as soon as you start to make just the smallest inputs, you start moving your character, and then obviously when it gets to the point to where there's drift, where it's moving without you doing any inputs on the right stick, then you taper it up a couple clicks. You can't really make those fine-tune adjustments on the first mission because you're on a train where it's swaying back and forth, so your aim is moving anyway, so you can't really tell the adjustments you're making. And your settings don't carry over from previous COD titles, or else I would just use my dead zone and sensitivity settings from other games. By the way, if you're curious what my sensitivity is, it's a 7.7 in any Call of Duty game, so that's 2 clicks above default, which is 5. Another weird thing, dogs are an instant kill, as in as soon as they touch you, they leap at you, and that's it. It just shows them leap at you and you're dead. There's no animation of them biting you or attacking you, and unlike previous Call of Duty games where you can press R3 to melee the dog and at least kick it off you to get another chance to shoot it before it kills you, they're just, you have to prioritize the dogs, because if they get close to you, they're like poisonous or something. As soon as they touch you, you're dead. Again, if that was explained in some back lore, like maybe they dipped the snout of the German Shepherds in some kind of poison gas or something, that would make sense, but it's not. It's just shitty game design. Also, in a lot of the battles, it is incredibly hectic to the point of confusion, where you don't know who's friendly and who's foe. This plays directly into some of the enemy AI being incredibly bad, where you're standing right next to an enemy and he's just looking at you, gives you the thumbs up, goes back to fighting, and you're like, that's an enemy, and then you kill him. But a lot of times there's so much action happening on scene that you don't know who your friendlies are, because a lot of times it doesn't pop up with their little friendly indicator, and there's enemies that are literally 2 feet in front of you and they're not shooting you because the AI can be a little bit wonky. And then this really applies to the aerial battles when you're doing the dog fighting with the planes, because there are so many aircrafts littering the skies, which I understand is probably historically accurate, but it's very confusing. You don't know who you're shooting at, and a lot of times even when you're trying to lock onto the enemy aircraft, it just doesn't shoot them out of the sky. And overall, the level design is relatively poor. Now, the missions with Lady Nightingale, aka Polina Petrova, those are really good. There's a lot of like sniping sections, and there's one mission that I loved of hers where I'm sniping people, then swapping to my close weapon to drill a couple people that are trying to push me, then back to my sniper rifle to kill some people that are in a building way far off in the distance, then switching to my sidearm to drill somebody else that's rushing me. It was really sick. But a lot of the other missions are not only forgettable, but also just frustrating, because there were a lot of times where it wouldn't prompt you where to go next. And there were a couple of times that I actually had to restart the last checkpoint just so I knew what I was supposed to be doing, because pressing the little options button, which pops up with your next objective, didn't really do much for me. So I'm going to give the story mode a 6 out of 10. I think that the level design was relatively poor except for a handful of missions, and overall there was a lot of frustrating moments. Next up, graphics. This game looks graphically beautiful. I did play it on the Xbox Series X, which has 12.1 teraflops of graphical power, so I didn't doubt for a second that the game was going to look good, but I didn't know it was going to look this good. The two things that make this game look very good would be textures and lighting, but primarily lighting. The lighting effects right out of the gate, even with the first mission, it's a night scene, but you have lights from the train, and then you see the rain whistling through the wind and everything through the lights. There's a lot of dark missions or scenes when you get into a dark corridor, but then you start shooting. Just watching the barrel flash of your gun, cascade across the walls and everything looks amazing. And even in the daylight scenes, there's some really good textures when you just stare at the ground or the sky. The textures looked very good. Overall, graphically, this is a very beautiful game, and I've heard no complaints of the performance on the PlayStation 5 or the PC either. Next up, audio design. The audio design is actually very good. The weapons have a very authentic, real-to-life sound. All the guns sound meaty and clunky. They don't sound hollow and tinny. They have a nice thunderous boom to them, explosions off in the distance, the rustling of wind through the trees, the screams of enemies off in the distance. Everything sounded very good. The only thing is the game sound is a little bit low in comparison to the system sounds on the Xbox, so I unlocked an Xbox trophy and it came on so loud. Literally 2 drips of urine came out and my heart rate boosted through the roof. I checked my little smartwatch thing and my heart rate was like a 160, which is about 15 more than usual. I'm a pretty high strung individual. But yes, the game sound is a little low in comparison to like the Xbox sound. So when you unlock a trophy, you better be ready for it, sister. The soundtrack is also very good. It's done by Bear McCreary, who's the gentleman that did God of War, C, Foundation, and Outlander, and it sounds very, very good. It comes in at just the right moments, not overpowering, but adding to the emotion of the scene, of the historic, gritty battles of World War II. And yeah, not a lot to say there. The soundtrack's very good. As for performance on PC, this game is optimized very similarly to COD Cold War, so not the best in comparison to other first-person shooters, but pretty good. Above average, I would say. With a decent graphics card and CPU, you most likely will be able to hold 144 hertz, 1440, if you taper back on graphical settings and especially things like ray tracing. As for on the Series X, it ran very good, except for one major crash I had where it completely crashed to the main menu of the Xbox. And then when I went back in the game, it would not resume where I was at all. I tried multiple times, so I ended up having to restart that mission, which I was at the very end of. It's like a 40-minute long mission. It's the last mission, so I had to restart that, which added about 30 to 40 minutes to my playtime, and that was pretty frustrating. A little clip of that here.
What the fuck, dude?
So time to lick our palms and then put the dick in verdict. What is my final conclusion of Call of Duty Vanguard? Is it worth a pickup? Is it worth the $60 US, as this is not on anything like Xbox Game Pass or PlayStation Now or any streaming services? You're going to have to buy this game as it is a third-party title from good old AB Activision Blizzard. So I have not played multiplayer or zombies yet, but if you were just picking up this game for the campaign, somebody buying Call of Duty just for the campaign, generally that's not the case. People will play through the campaign once or twice and then spend the majority of their time getting their money's worth out of multiplayer, zombies, or Spec Ops if it is a Modern Warfare title. Call of Duty has had some epic stories, sagas, and campaigns in the past. Modern Warfare 1, 2, and 3, Black Ops 1 and 2, and shoot, even Cold War of last year had a very good story or campaign doing a lot of 80s espionage. Based on the frustrating moments of the campaign, not to mention the confusing nature of telling everything through a cutscene, and the entire purpose of these cutscenes is to build on the four main characters, and only one of them gets a fleshed out backstory that gives her any kind of relatable human nature. Because of that, I would say no, and I would not recommend Call of Duty Vanguard. I would recommend to save your $60 US. I would also recommend not to buy Battlefield 2042 and save that $60 and then put that towards something else. There's a lot of other good games that have come out here recently. For example, Halo Infinite, and that's playable on Game Pass. This is a game that I would not replay the campaign. I don't intend to replay the campaign on a higher difficulty or anything like that. There has been Call of Duty stories or campaigns that I do actively replay because they're fun and the missions are simply unforgettable and have some epic moments. This really wasn't one of them. I think the best part of the story was the cutscenes, although like I said, a few of the cutscenes should have been actual playable missions. Absolutely gorgeous because they actually brought in a Hollywood movie designer, director, to kind of set those up. At the end of the day, it's a game, not a movie, so you don't really want to be sitting through a dickload of cutscenes. And this is coming from somebody that actually enjoys games with a lot of cutscenes and stories explained, like Metal Gear Solid, for example. But even for me, I was like, ooh, less cutscenes, more gameplay, please. I mean, if the campaign's only going to be 5 hours, let, an hour of it not be cutscenes. In my honest opinion, I would say to go ahead and puff pass on this game. Just put it on the back burner because guess what? You're going to have a new Call of Duty game next year because Activision Blizzard has been doing this annual release cycle for over a decade now because they're like, well, we've got 4 studios. We've got Infinity Ward, Treyarch, Sledgehammer Games, and Raven Software. Granted, Raven Software, this is another reason that I said that this was going to be the trashiest COD game in a while. Raven Software is no longer a support studio for any Call of Duty full release games. They only work on Warzone content. That's all they do. Not worth a pickup for the campaign only. Again, comprehensive review of the multiplayer and zombies coming soon. And then I might do a 4th video, kind of a comprehensive review of all 3 of the major components, but I am going to focus on the multiplayer and zombie modes for now. So those videos will be coming out in the very near future. If you enjoyed this Honest Game review, liking it will help it to get seen by more gamers. This information will reach and assist them as well. Help them make a decision if Vanguard is worth the pickup or not. Subscribe for more content like this. I cover news in the gaming community and industry, as well as tutorials helping you get set up streaming and YouTubing, and Honest Gaming peripheral reviews, keyboards, mice, headsets, controllers. Check out the merch store at the link in the description below, as well as my exclusive discount code for AIM controllers, and I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.